Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dimes, a college basketball podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Jamie Shaw. Jamie, we are almost in October. That means we are almost in November, which means we're almost in basketball season. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. Basketball season for me starts this weekend. We had a nice little couple month break. So while I'm working through the 2027 rankings this week, we got Border League that starts this weekend, USA Basketball next weekend, and we're on into the season with a whole bunch of preseason stuff and all that on the high school side. College side, obviously traveling to gyms and practices and all that stuff as well. So we are while the season that hasn't started yet, we are well in on our way to basketball.
Yeah, we are in the thick of it now. I love it. We have a few 2026 commitments to talk about that I'm really excited to cover here, and then we've talked about a lot of the young guys the past few podcasts, and we talked about freshmen, sophomores. I want to touch on our favorite seniors in college basketball. So we're gonna do that later on as well. First, 2026 commits. It had been a while since we'd done these, and so we had a handful of them. I want to focus on these three specifically. The first one coming very recently, coming over the weekend. Tay Kinney commits to Kansas, 6'1" point guard, the number 22 player on Rivals out of OTE. What are your thoughts on Kinney? Obviously, you've seen him plenty, and you know what he can do. Just what are your thoughts on what Kansas is getting?
Well, it was Tay Kinney is a very interesting player over the last, I guess, couple years going to OTE. He's become a pretty viral type of player. You know, the numbers, the impressions that he pushes whenever he posts something or when something goes out about him online, it is pretty impressive. Possibly the most of anybody in this 2025 class. Kansas coming in and getting him was an interesting get. A lot of the time, obviously, he's from Newport, Kentucky. A lot of the conversation surrounding his recruitment was around Kentucky and Louisville, going all the way up until the last maybe month or so, and then Kansas swoops in and is able to get things done. He's currently an Adidas athlete. Now he's talked about throughout his process that the Adidas contract that he's currently under will come up after the high school season ends. But obviously, Kansas being an Adidas flagship school and all that, Kenny's one of the top 5 point guards in the class. He had a big summer this year, traveling all over from going over to Europe, USA Basketball, NBA Top 100 camp, and then playing on the Adidas circuit. You love his craft with the basketball. He's able to get to his spots on the floor. He's has upside as a shooter going from there. So there's a lot to like about his game. There's a lot to like about what he brings to the table. And coming off of a season where Kansas is going to have a very guard-heavy lineup this year with Darren Peterson, a high-usage guard with Peterson having the ball in his hands. Transitioning from that, after Peterson goes, most likely moves on to the NBA draft, Tay Kinney coming in and kind of taking over, seeing what a high-usage kind of guard can do in that type of system.
Do you think, I mean, obviously, like you said, he's from Kentucky. This was a Kentucky-Louisville recruitment for a while before Kansas swings in. I mean, Kentucky and Louisville fans maybe watching this or watching, other Tay Kinney stuff. Do you think it's like this is something they missed out on, or is this just a good job from Kansas?
I think this is just a good job from Kansas. They were able to push the right buttons and get the job done at the end of the day. As you look at Louisville and Kentucky, most preseason analysis, most preseason prognosticators have them in the top 10 this coming up season. So they're going to be in a good spot. Both those programs are going to be rolling along pretty well. But it was no loss on their part. It was more so of Kansas really just getting the job done.
Yeah, I was just curious from that perspective. All right, Tay Kinney. Moving on to Jalen Montanati, who commits to Oklahoma State, a 6'7" small forward from Owasso, Oklahoma. Sorry. The number 55 player on Rivals, a guy who I saw just a few months ago before Peach Jam. I'm curious to get your perspective because in the couple games I was able to see him, there were some real flashes, and now it's about consistency for me because you see the frame. He's really, I mean, it's impressive. You see the upside as a scorer, like all three levels. But what's your take on Jalen? What Oklahoma State's getting here?
Well, it's a good way to get on the board for Oklahoma State.
for
What
sure.
Montnati is, he's a state champion, two-time Oklahoma Gatorade State Player of the Year. He's won a gold medal with USA Basketball, a FIBA gold medal with USA Basketball. So there's a lot of prestige there, a lot of lineage, also with his dad being a former player at Oklahoma State. So this is their first player off the board for Steve Lutz's program, and it's a good one. It checks a lot of boxes that you have um, as a player. What he is a shooter. The shooting is the kind of the superpower that he brings to the table. When his shot's falling, he can get hot in a hurry and really ring a lot of them off quick. He pulls gravity, opens up the floor for spacing when it comes to his team and what they're able to utilize him as. Even as a shot maker, you have to have somebody trailing him at all times because he can shoot off the
Yep.
movement, shoot off the catch and everything when he gets his shoulder square, high release point, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, for this to be Oklahoma State's first get in the state of Oklahoma, first get of the cycle,
Yeah.
a player coming from the state of Oklahoma, two-time state player of the year, and all of that type of stuff, building around what it is, it's a huge get for the Cowboys. It's a huge lockdown that they should be very excited about watching him as a player, watching to see what he brings to that high octane type of system.
Yeah, definitely a huge get for Lutz and them. Moving on, our third player, last one we want to talk about here, Hakeem Olajuwon, son, Aziz Olajuwon,
Mhm.
commits to Stanford, 6'6" small forward out of IMG Academy, the number 104 player on Rivals. This is a guy who I'll start this. When I saw him in Georgia, or I guess it was South Carolina, um, he stood out with his motor and his energy, and he was an incredible rebounder and playmaker, and had some like real shows of athleticism. And I thought to myself, I don't know if he's a top end guy, like in terms of like I don't think he's a top 40 guy in this class or top 50 guy in this class. Like I said, Rivals we have him at 104, which I think is kind of where I would have him. But damn, I think he can really be an awesome college basketball player for like 3 or 4 years, and someone who, as he continues to expand his game on the offensive side, is going to be a real handful of people. And I think he's going to get on the court early for Stanford and for wherever he would have gone. I think that's like the kind of player Stanford's getting, like a right off the bat, get on the court, and then all right, we're gonna work him up. Like it might be 6 points per game, then it goes to 8, then it goes to 12. It goes from there. But this was a really exciting guy, and like in the games I saw of him, there were times where I was, oh, he's might be the best player on the court at times, but it wasn't always because of his scoring. It's because I just think he does so much on the court well, and yeah, a really impressive player to me.
His recruitment was an interesting one. Obviously, his dad being Akeem made that run with Houston, and Aziz growing up in the Texas area and all that. Um, a lot of the schools were kind of just watching Houston, especially when he blew up. Aziz's blow up kind of happened within the last 8 or so months. As that was happening, everybody was looking at Houston, looking at Houston. Then when Houston finally offered, a lot of teams were just like, oh, well, that's what's going to happen. Well, not Kyle Smith and Stanford. They stayed the course. They got in early, built the relationship, stayed the course, and they ended up landing Aziz Olajuwon, who, like I said, within the last kind of 8 months, is really game. You're starting to see flashes of what it could be as we move
Hmm.
forward, as you were saying. Um, his game's still raw. You see a lot of again, flashes. You do see the motor, you see the aggression, you see the confidence, you see his ability to create advantages on the ball and score. Now it's all about putting it together. As you mentioned, finding the consistency, getting the balance points right, finding his spots, and becoming an efficient player in what he does. There's a lot of upside there. Obviously, nothing like his dad. He's a 6'5", 6'6" wing.
Yep.
Dad was obviously one of the best centers, if not the best center ever to play basketball. So not like his dad. So you know he's got a lot of upside. The upside is what keeps him where it is. He's 14 points a game on the EYBL, almost 20 points per game in the NBPA camp this summer. Um, there's just a lot of tools in place there. Now it's all about fine tuning it, putting it together, and going to play for a guy like Kyle Smith, who has put guys into the league, guys that were rated less than what
Yeah.
Aziz is coming in, putting them into the NBA. Especially at the wing position as well. So I'm very intrigued to see that fit. I'm very intrigued to see what that looks like at Stanford. and it's one of those ones where in a couple of years we look back and wonder why he was ranked lower, in that 104 range. Once things come together for him, once he kind of figures it out, consolidates and streamlines his game.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. He's gonna be interesting one to watch, especially at Stanford in the coming seasons. All right, let's move on to the second part of the podcast. Our favorite seniors in college basketball. Now, this includes redshirt seniors, any kind of seniors, basically, if you're going to your fourth year or beyond. Um, there's obviously a lot of names you could pick from. There's a lot of names that college basketball fans know. You
I've
can
got
go through.
four.
You can go through. I have three,
Perfect.
and I had to trim it. I mean, I had to trim it down because you can go to any team and be like, "Yep, I love this guy."
So I guess when looking at it, when you texted, you were just like, let's do seniors. So it's like, all right, cool. So what? So looking at the parameters of what I was going through with mine, guys that kind of had played for teams that had relevance within college basketball and their role on that team. I don't want to say dictates what it is, but their role being the best version of themselves elevates that team toward the expectations they have going into the season.
Yeah.
So kind of narrowing it down, I could have probably, as you said, picked 50 of them, but I narrowed it to four. And these four guys, I think, have an intriguing relevance within the college basketball landscapes. Two transfers and two guys that are returning.
All right. Let's see. You started off.
Start with Josh Dix, transferring from Iowa to Creighton. I think pretty universally, Creighton is a top 25 team by most people heading into this season. As a team, they're known, Greg McDermott's system, known for shooting and spacing. They led the Big East last year in three-pointers made. Josh Dix comes in from the transfer portal. He was at Iowa as quite possibly, arguably, the best shooter in the transfer portal this past year. A 6'6", he's a rising senior. He has a career 41.9% three-point shooter, shot over 42% from three last year. He has 111 career makes, 14.4 points per game last season. Obviously, I'm just rattling off stats now. So to get more conversational with it, you put a shooter, a guy who has 3 years worth of shooting on his resume at the high major level, into a system that provides spacing, that has expectations, and has a need as they return just one starter from last year's team, has a need for a player to step up and start scoring. I have a lot of intrigue with what Josh Dix could bring to Creighton this upcoming season, and also how he plays into the expectations that Creighton has as a top 25 program.
Do you think he scores more than he did last year? He had 14 and a half points per game last year. Do you think he surpasses that, or do you think that's about the range?
I think it's available. I think there are shots. I think there are opportunities that are going to be available for him to do that. As I said, they only returned one starter. Jackson McAndrew is that guy. He was
Yep.
not one of the leading scorers on this past year's team. So you bring in kind of Owen Freeman also. You bring in Nick Graves. You bring in these pieces around him, and you have guys step up like Jason Green and then Jackson McAndrew into their roles. I think the opportunity is wide open for Josh Dix to come in and surpass that 14.4. But even if he hovers at that 14.4, the system, the efficiency that he plays with, all of that type of stuff are very intriguing fits for what he brings to the table.
Yeah. If he surpasses 14 points per game and he still shoots 42% from three, like we might be talking about like a second round draft pick here for Dix. But yeah,
And if you turn on the film and watch, man, his clips on that shooting, he's shooting off movement, high quick
yep.
release, able to step into it and all that as well. He's progressed his game every single year, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. So I'm very eager to see what he brings to the floor.
Creighton's not a team we've talked a ton about, but they are going to be one of the more fun teams to watch on paper. Like you said, Graves. Also added Blake Harper, the MEAC Player of the Year from Howard. Freeman, like you said. So Creighton's someone that has a fun team. They always have a fun team, but yeah, they are going to be fun to watch this year. All right, my first one. I'll stick with the shooting theme. I have one pure shooter, and I'll go with him here. Richie Saunders out of BYU. Um, I know we've talked about BYU on this podcast before, and it's not just because he scored 16 points per game last year and was 43% from three and is going to be awesome again. It's because I'm just really interested to see BYU with this, with their personnel this year, with adding Rob Wright and adding AJ. What does Richie Saunders' role look like? And I think he's going to score a ton still, but now it's all right. We have these other two real playmakers alongside you, and you don't have to do as much here. So honestly, maybe he's probably going to shoot in the mid 40s again from three. He's probably going to get some really good looks. We know the offense that they run is efficient. We know that they're going to play with pace and play free. And him being one of, I think, only two returners with Kebaketa, I think that gives them a lot of confidence in what Richie Saunders can do this year. So Richie Saunders is going to be my first pick in terms of guys that I'm excited to see, guys that I'm expecting to have big years. And like we said, could be a draft pick if everything goes right. Could be there with AJ in terms of guys getting drafted in the. AJ will go for, for top 3, top 5 or something, but Richie could hear his name called as well as at some point if everything breaks right for him. So if he has a big year, I think it's just a great, great pairing with the backcourt that they have. And yeah, he's going to have a big year.
I agree with you. I'm fascinated to see what Richie Saunders brings. Obviously, Big 12's most improved player last year, first team All Big 12 this past year. As you said, with the numbers that he put up and everything, going from a focal point to be I don't want to say a supporting role, but being a co-focal point now with the guys that you mentioned. They also bring in Kennard Davis. They return,
Mm-hmm.
Kebaketa, who's top 5 in the league in rebounds this past year as well. The starting 5 for BYU, each one of them individually is so intriguing. Put them together, and that system that Kevin Young put together, with the run they had this past year, how it all came together for him and everything. It's going to be a very fascinating team to watch. If as they say in the NBA, league pass. They're a league pass team for
Yes.
sure. When it comes to this high school season or when it comes to this college season.
Yes, for sure. All right, who's next?
Next up for me is Jacoby Gillespie, point guard, transferred from Maryland to Tennessee. Helped Maryland finish 27-9 this past year. They were number 9 overall in the final AP. He finished top 5 in the league in both assists with 4.8 and steals per game 1.9. What you want from your point guard there. He also averaged 14.7 points on 40.7% shooting. He's a former MVC, at Belmont in Missouri Valley Conference, first team all defensive guy. So he kind of brings a lot of what you want at the point of attack when it comes to a high level team. 3 of the past 4 years, Tennessee's finished in the top 5 in the country in the final AP poll. They come in this year. The team is not quite as deep as you would like, especially in the backcourt. A lot of eyes going to be on Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament to carry the load for him, to kind of get to the highest expectations that Tennessee can have this year. I think there's a very real chance Jacoby Gillespie is the best point guard in the SEC this upcoming season. As we head in here to what he brings to the table, what he brings to the floor, and they're going to need that. Tennessee's going to need him to be that for them to kind of reach the heights. As I said, 3 of the past 4 years in the top 5 in the final AP, to reach the heights that they've kind of experienced these past 4 or 5 years as a program. But Jacoby Gillespie brings so much to the table with the sheer speed that he has, but also the 40% shooting, the defensive capabilities that he brings at the point of attack, his ability to kind of penetrate a defense, collapse them, and then make a decision, make a read for his teammates. He's able to provide for himself. He's able to provide for his team. And it'll be very interesting to see him go on and off the ball this upcoming season. Nate Ament is a very, very adept player, especially in a pick and roll type situation. So you get Jacoby Gillespie kind of off ball, spreading the floor a little bit, let Nate Ament make some reads and pick and roll. It'll be very interesting to see the two-man game that those two bring together and what they're able to bring to Tennessee. But I think Jacoby Gillespie's role within this college basketball season could be a very interesting one to the heights that Tennessee reaches.
When you first said maybe the best point guard in the SEC, it caught me off guard. But now as I look through it, I don't think it's that hot of a take. Like, he's definitely top 3 at the very least. If we're talking, not to get too deep into SEC point guard rankings, but it just made me think for a second. You know how I love Tahad Pettiford.
Pettiford, LeBaron Philon, you got Boogie Flanders.
Hubbard is back.
Yeah, there's some really good guards in the
But
SEC.
he's in that. Yeah, he's definitely in that. Like, he's in that top tier. Like, now that you mentioned it, when you phrase it like that, it is definitely magnifies what we expect from him this year and what he needs to do for this Tennessee team in order for it to reach its potential. We know Tennessee's going to guard the hell out of people. We know they're going to be physical. But him and Ament offensively are going to have to carry a reasonable load here to, like, on a team that isn't as deep as maybe has been in years past, where they've kind of rolled out a bunch of different guys. So
Yeah.
that's a really good pick. That's a really good pick. All right, I'll go with. I'll stick with the Maryland theme here. I'm gonna go Pharrell Payne now at Maryland, coming from Texas A&M, following Buzz Williams. Uh, Someone who I don't know if he embodies Buzz Williams the way that like a Solomon Washington does or like a Anderson Garcia did, those kind of bigs where they were just there just to get rebounds. And that's why they led the country in reboundings every year, because they had these dudes that just grabbed boards and didn't do much else. Payne is really skilled. Like he can really play with the ball in his hands and has really good length at 6'9". Like I think his wingspan, you feel it when he's on the court, and he does a little bit of everything. And that's what I love about Pharrell Payne. I knew it was a big addition last year for A&M, and when they added him, like year over year is going to be different for them to have that sort of presence. And now he follows Buzz to Maryland, and I think he's going to be a real contributor for them. Averaged 10 points per game last year, 64.5% from two, 5 boards, 1.1 blocks. I think on both sides of the floor, this is a guy who can be one of the, you know, a top half in terms of if you're ranking the bigs, because now my mind is on rankings now that we've started talking about it. But he's going to be a real guy from Maryland this year, and he embodies, again, what Buzz Williams wants to do, and I'm excited to see it. So give me Pharrell Payne out of Maryland.
He's one of those lunch pail guys. One of those
Yeah.
guys that you don't ever, you're not even going to say a mixtape of him. You're not really. He's not going to lead Sports Center when it comes to college basketball conversations. However, you always see his production, the steady nature that he brings to the paint every single game, game in and game out. He's kind of a lunch pail guy when it comes to that. And it seems that Buzz Williams has made his career on lunch pail guys.
Yeah, he brought over Payne and Solomon Washington at the very least from the A&M teams to help and get his culture right as he goes to the Big Ten. So
Next up for me, Zuby Ejiofor at St. John's. You look kind of through the college basketball landscape. Lots of conversation about Rick Pitino heading into this season. Lots of conversation about St. John's being a top 10 team coming off the run that they had this past year. Well, they went through a lot of roster change-ups.
mm-hmm.
However, within that roster change-up, he returns Zuby Ejiofor, the big guy in the paint. What jumped off the page at me about Zuby's game was the efficiency he brought. Kind of within that 14.7, 8.1 rebounds per game, tons of efficiency. He was top 5 in the Big East in player efficiency, top 5 in the Big East in win shares, in box plus minus, offensive rating, defensive rating. The list goes on. He was just incredibly efficient at what he does. And when you have that on the block, you can build a whole bunch of other things around it. When you have that steady nature, that efficiency around the basket, you're able to kind of build around that. Bringing in guys like Ian Jackson, Josan Sannon. They brought in the defensive specialist with Dylan Mitchell coming in from Cincinnati. There's a lot of new pieces surrounding what it is that Rick Pitino has in St. John's, and along with all of the expectations they have of this potentially top 10 team, of this kind of universally thought of preseason top 10 team. You have Zuby Ejiofor right there in the middle, kind of anchoring things, playing steadily, efficiently, every single game, game in, game out. You can kind of hang your hat on his 15 and 8 every single game, but ability to do so with knowing what he's going to do out of his touches, getting the ball into the paint, collapsing the defense, and understanding what Zuby's going to be able to do with his touches. There's a lot of peace of mind that comes with that when you have a big that's able to kind of do that you can hang your hat on. And now he's a senior this year, coming in, first team All Big East, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm eager to see kind of what he looks like and the fingerprint he's able to put on this college basketball season.
Yeah, they brought in, like you said, Dylan Mitchell. They brought in Bryce Hopkins. I think they surrounded him with bigs that can take a little pressure off him, but also complement him. I
They
think
can move.
yes, some good athletes that
Yeah.
that can play alongside him. I think that's a good point as well. And we know Patino's going to get his bigs going. He's going to have really, really strong paint presence every year, And I think you with them, and then also a guard like Ian Jackson who can shoot it. But I when I think of him, and I think of him like in high school, I just think of how quick he is and just how he can get to the basket when there is a gap, and that's going to be exciting to have them. And again, they're not they're not going to be, I don't think, some high volume 3-point shooting team this year. That's not what we anticipate. So you have these bigs and you have guards that can get to the rim. This feels like, albeit a very, very different team from last year, this again feels like a team that is going to embody what Rick Pitino does. Yeah, last year, for context, 342nd in 3-point attempt rate and 340th in 3-point percentage. I didn't know the numbers off the top. I knew it was low, but
Yeah.
yes, it will be a lot of edge of four.
They're going to have depth, but also too having a big like an edge of four allows your guard play to be a little bit more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because if things do go left a little bit, okay, all right, let's get Zuby a touch here. It's been a couple possessions. Let's get him a touch on the block, kind of settle things down, run some shot clock a little bit, and get an opportunity at the rim, get an efficient opportunity at the rim. So, kind of having a post presence like that, we've seen it with Zach Yee, Hunter Dickinson, we've seen it with these guys, Donovan Klingen in the past. Having a post presence like that kind of opens things up for everybody on the team.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Last thing I have on edge of four, his usage wasn't super high.
Right.
He was third on the team in usage. Obviously, R.J. Lewis, Kadari Richmond, had a lot of usage themselves, but only like 21% usage. I expect that number to be probably closer to like 25, if not north of 25
But
this
that's
year.
that's the beauty of his game is the efficiency. As
Very
I was
true.
kind of saying, you know what you're going. At least last year, this past season, you kind of knew what you're going to get when you got him the ball. But he's not somebody that demanded the ball every single play.
Very true. Yeah. 71% from the free throw line on 226 attempts last year. All right, my last one, Darian Williams for now NC State, who comes over from Texas Tech, uh, a 6'6" wing, 15 points per game, 3.6 assists, and obviously a massive part of that Texas Tech team, one of the top players in the transfer portal. I'm not digging deep here to find a senior. This is a guy who, when we look at this NC State team and what they can be, and we've talked about a lot of transfers and exciting players that they have here, he has to be the steady hand every single game for this team to get where it wants to go. He cannot have ups and downs. He can't, wait for somebody else to do it. Darian Williams has to be the guy that is averaging 15 points per game and not having a random 4-point per game outing. And as a senior, because that's what we're talking about with all these guys, is we expect these players to have that level of consistency. With the ball in his hands, I think he's a really, really comfortable playmaker. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Will Wade had him in ball screens at times, had him initiating the offense, looking for allowing other guys to play off of him. And with that being the case, I expect Darian Williams to have an even better stat line than he had last year, as the focal point of NC State. So we've talked about this team. I think a lot of people have high expectations, as they should. Getting Darian Williams out of the portal showed that NC State's going to be for real this year, because I expect him to have a hand in everything that they do on both sides of the ball and be a consistent player. So Darian Williams, I am very, very, very high on him, and I think he's going to be an all-conference player this year.
For sure. The vibes are high in Raleigh right now. Will Wade's kind of reinvigorated that program that just went to the Final Four of the NCAA tournament 2 years ago.
Which is crazy to think about.
There's expectations with them. They have depth. The central figure is going to be Darian Williams. This team is going to go as far. They're towing the line right now between most preseason rankings I've seen of being a top 25 team. They're kind of right in that 20 to 30 range. And for them to step into that top 25 consistently, for them to continue to make a run in the tournament, all that, Darian Williams is going to have to be that first team all Big 12 performer. But he's not going to have to be dominate the ball. That's the beauty of Darian Williams' game, is he's more of a connector than he is really a ball dominant guy. But he's somebody with the ball in his hands. He's able to consistently create advantages both for himself and teammates.
All right. What's your last one?
Seth Trimble at UNC.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very fascinated to see, because there's going to be other guys on that roster that get more headlines. You bring in Luca from overseas, you bring in Henry Vassar, you've got Caleb Wilson coming in. You have Kyan Evans. You have the depth with Jonathan Powell, and the bigs coming back, Zayden Hyde and James Brown. Jaron Stevenson coming in. There's all these players. They had a huge offseason. Seth Trimble started 18 games last year for UNC. He averaged 13.7 points, 5.9 rebounds, 1.6 steals in those 18 starts that he had for the Tar Heels this past year. He brings intriguing defensive upside to the team, able to guard probably all three perimeter spots while sliding down and giving, and able to bump a little bit around the basket. He's a physically strong player, very athletic, long, and he's a downhill guard with the ball in his hands. I'm going to be curious to see what the UNC offense looks like this year. To see what kind of offensive flow that they're able to bring. They add shooting, and they also bring in a couple ball in hand type playmakers. With Luka good in the pick and roll, you have Kyan Evans, who's a 40+% 3-point shooter this past year. Jonathan Powell had shooting upside coming in. Jaden Young also coming in as high school players, with what they're able to do in college so far. Seth Trimble is able to bully his way downhill to the basket, get to the rim, finish above the rim, and he brings kind of a fierce presence to the team. I think this UNC team on paper has a ton of talent.
Yeah.
I think they have a ton of depth. I think they're also going to need that senior presence of Seth Trimble to be the glue that kind of holds them together, be the locker room guy, be the mature voice in the room. But also, they're going to need him on the floor. They're going to need his defensive presence of what he's able to bring. He's going to need to tap into the top end of his defensive ability. As I said, in the 18 starts, 1.6 steals per game. He's able to switch between multiple point of attack, off-ball defensive roles on the perimeter. But being able to get downhill, being able to consistently score and rely. Throughout his time at UNC so far, he's been more of a flashes guy, obviously playing beside the RJ Davises, the Ian Jacksons, Drake Powell's, all these guys that they've had in his time there. He's kind of been a complementary, a secondary type guy, but his flashes have been pretty high. He's had strings of a couple games in a row where he's been able to show what he's capable of doing. I don't know that he's necessarily a leading scorer type, but his presence, his consistency, his efficiency is going to be needed on this year's team, along with his physicality and toughness. I think this UNC team, there's a lot to be seen with them. I think they have a high ceiling. I think they are a team. While most people are talking about them right now, kind of in that same NC State range, 20 to 30 range, I think they do have much higher potential if everybody's able to play to their top end. I think the adhesive agent within that is Seth Trimble.
For sure. I don't have anything to add. You covered that very, very well. But I did realize that we can't end this without talking about the senior of all seniors, Chad Baker Mazzara, who is 25 years old and will turn 26 in January. Chad Baker Mazzara transfers. He's on his fifth team since 2020. Transfers over to USC for Eric Musselman. We gotta touch on it real quick. What are our expectations for Chad Baker Mazzara at USC? He averaged 12 points a game last year, and while obviously he hit a ton of big shots, like I thought about him, like I think about him when I think about that Auburn team. 12 that's a lot of points, and he's going to be on a team with some real scorers around him: Rodney Rice, Jacob Coffey, so on. Is he going to put up 12 points per game again? And what's his role on this USC team?
I think with Chad Baker Mazzara, what he brings is connectivity. Not necessarily the fact that you can put the ball in his hands and he can make a play, but the fact that he provides spacing with some shooting, he provides some defensive presence, guarding up the line off the ball, and aggressive there. And he brings a lot of passion and fire. Rodney Rice is going to have a high usage rate. I think Ezra Sarr is another player to kind of watch with what he's able to bring from Utah. I think Jacob Kofi is one to watch take a step. I think there could be real conversations that if he's able to kind of continue to develop as to what he is, there could be some NBA type conversations that he's able to enter, provided he takes that step. So I think that's the best case scenario for Chad Baker Mazzara. He's not the featured guy. He's not even asked to be the second guy. But what he's able to do is step into his spots, make a shot here and there, bring a lot of fire, get in the passing lanes, and kind of help elevate the floor of his team toward winning possibilities. So I think that's a very good spot for him to land in. I think it's a very it's capable for him to, I don't know necessarily be at the top of headlines, but I think there's a capability of him to provide help toward possible winning.
He brings the juice. He brings the juice, and you always need players that can bring the juice. And it's gonna be fun to watch him. Well, wishing him the best. Hope he has a great season over there. But had to have some fun as we talk about some seniors here. I'm sure. I mean, he's heard about it for the past year plus how old he is, and so now we get to see Chad Baker-Mazara this year at USC. So that's all we got for y'all today. Thanks, Jamie, for doing this, and we'll continue to ramp up our preseason coverage throughout the coming month. As we, like I said, Jamie will be busy as hell doing this. I'm still over here trying to get through football season and to get to basketball season, but we're doing our thing. We're doing all right. All right, that's all we got for y'all today. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you have not already, and we will talk to y'all later.
Matthew, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.